Welcome. We're all here today because this matters. It matters more than just business and profits. It matters to our way of life and the values we all share. SAFE and the Electrification Coalition were created with this mission in mind. It started because it was too much to watch the blood and treasure expended for the oil we needed to run our global mobile economy, and the countries we needed to work with that did not share our interests or our values. SAFE and the Electrification Coalition have grown in the last 19 years to tackle these challenges as they have emerged. We have started initiatives with fabulous executive directors and teams that see a problem and then run for the breach. These initiatives, not surprisingly, match our views on what is needed if we are going to have a comprehensive or systems perspective. It is the reason that we called this year's summit Solving the Global Power Puzzle. ChatGPT might have helped come up with the title. I'm just kidding. But we believe that we are truly trying to solve a puzzle, putting all the right pieces in place. Civilizations and countries since the beginning of time have gone to war for energy and resources. And it is the supply chains and industrial capacity that win those wars. And now is no different. This is happening in the context of a battle for ideas between authoritarianism versus democratic ideals that we all hold so dear. On top of that, we have planetary environmental challenges. We live in the most dangerous of times because we have let our industrial capacity and mental muscle atrophy. Besides the fundamental danger of not being able to build and manufacture what we need, we gain no environmental benefit and do not live up to our values when it can be done in another country by burning coal or dumping mineral waste tailings to produce our minerals and materials for our batteries and solar panels. SAFE believes that we can go from a fossil world to a minerals-based world, but the time frame and the interim years matter. SAFE and the Electrification Coalition are focused on reducing the demand for energy and minerals by using new technology to move people and goods safely, affordably, and cleanly. This would not be possible without the great advances in big data, computing power, telecommunications, and sensors. We need to think holistically to find exponential gains. We then need to make sure we have the minerals and materials needed and the private sector willing to invest in them. Finally, we need the energy to turn those minerals into materials and manufactured goods. It takes massive amounts of energy to crush, smelt, process. We have forgotten these things because we have shipped much of this capacity overseas in the last decades. We're all individually richer for that, but our planet and our societies ultimately became poorer. It took a pandemic, a semiconductor shortage, and the largest war in Europe to wake us up. This dual battle for the planet and for democracy can bring us together across the political spectrum. This is what SAFE and our Energy Security Leadership Council have always done so well. In the end, we need the same minerals and materials for our energy transition and for the militaries that we and our allies are building, rebuilding, and restocking. We might have different reasons and goals, whether Democrats or Republicans, conservatives or liberals, environmentalists or national security hawks. But the pathways are the same, and they are in fact mutually reinforcing. Tomorrow, we'll spend our time talking about the use of new technology to move people and goods, from digital tools to electrification of vehicles and ports, to electrical vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. These initiatives are led by our Coalition for Reimagined Mobility and our sister organization, the Electrification Coalition, led by Ben Prohaska. Today, we will spend much of the day talking about minerals and supply chains. We will only have the minerals and materials if we have the global strategy with our allies and partners in the Global South. Our Center for Critical Mineral Strategy and our Center for Strategic Industrial Materials have led the charge. It was actually our work on industrial materials, aluminum in particular, that showed us that it was not fundamentally a trade issue, but an energy issue. Our smelters cannot get the affordable, reliable, and clean energy they need, and thus they have closed down one by one, leaving only 4 smelters left in the United States. This is the problem that is growing increasingly acute as demand itself grows. Our grid security project is wrestling with these economic and national security risks in a world where black swan events are no longer black swans, and an antiquated, fragmented decision-making system can no longer address the national interest. Finally, SAFE has gone global with our new European Initiative for Energy Security, headquartered in Brussels, so that we can work side by side with fellow democracies to achieve these goals together. We have also expanded our footprint through our partnership with the State Department and the Mineral Security Partnership that is putting SAFE in the center of the global action between consuming and producing countries, the private sector miners, processors, off-takers, and financiers, and the NGO community. Ultimately, it is hard to compete against a pure competitor with an opaque supply chain who can manipulate the price at different steps in the chain and use lower standards that we do not accept in our own countries. This is why we need to use our greatest assets to our advantage: transparency, high standards, independent inspections, consumer and capital markets, and geopolitical alliances. I was at PDAC last week, which is the largest mining conference in the world, in Toronto, hosting a roundtable with the State Department for the MSP members, producing countries, and private companies. There were two thoughts that will change this narrative and flip this script: existential threat and backbone. We have an existential threat for our countries, our industrial capacity, our companies from mining to manufacturing, and our politics, which is now so turbulent in no small measure because of this hollowing out. But we also need backbone. We know what to do. There's no perfect solutions, or it'll be energy, water, indigenous issues, but we can address them with our eyes open rather than right now our eyes wide shut. We know that we need a transparent system from the wellhead or the mine, infused with human rights, labor, and environment, which for the most part are already existing in all of our laws. Inspections like we do for drugs and food in other countries before importing them, and a collective will to do this together among NATO and non-NATO military allies. We may all pay a little more, but we'll be doing it all together. You'll hear this story told multiple ways over the next 2 days. This is the global power puzzle we must solve. The good news is that we've done it before, and we will do it again. I want to just take this moment before turning to Admiral Greenert, who is our co-chair on our Energy Security Leadership Council, to thank the SAFE team. They wake up every day trying to solve this problem, both for the planet and for our society. In special, I would like to thank Jeff Gerlach, who put this whole program together. I'd like to thank Leslie and Noah and Jason on the communications team, Bridget, who made this all happen, and Gorang and Alyssa, who have badgered our great sponsors. I also want to thank our sponsors. Please look outside and look at the wall and go and say hi to both our team and to our sponsors, because this matters and we wouldn't be able to do it without them. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to talking to many of you and being part of this program over the next 2 days.
Please welcome the co-chair of SAFE's Energy Security Leadership Council, Admiral Jonathan Greenert.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Robbie, for the opportunity to be here. Many thanks to SAFE in general for what you do. I'm here this morning to give you a little bit of a perspective on why we, the ESLC, are committed to the organization, to its charter, and why this is a matter of great importance, we think, and a matter of really our national security. So I want to give you just a couple of points in that regard. First of all, energy access, secure energy, is essential to any economy. If you want to have a viable economy, you have to create a product or products, from agriculture, mining, all the way to high technology products. You got to deliver the product to market. You have to get it there so that your consumers can get it. But underpinning all of that is the energy to create and the energy to deliver. So you really have to have all of those. A thriving and therefore a secure economy is essential to a secure America. So what we're talking about essentially is the national security of America being directly proportional to our access to, the reliability of, and the security of our energy. No nation survives without all of those. Now, wait a minute. North Korea does. So, okay, I'll give you that. But nobody else does. So this is why this all matters to SAFE and to those of us in the Energy Security Leadership Council. The next point, a little bit about who is the ESLC. I mean, who are these folks and why do they do what they do? Well, first of all, the ESLC are really business and military leaders, former military officers, dedicated to help SAFE pursue and enable diversified and accessible energy. As I said, for the economy and really for our security. We are retired four-star officers and government leaders, and we're also business leaders in finance, transportation, the maritime industry, and of course the energy industry. So for example, if you look at the agenda on the summit, you'll see Mr. Fred Smith, the founder and chairman of FedEx. And also you'll see Mr. Adam Goldstein, who's the executive chair of the KNNX Corporation, but also the CEO, former CEO and president of Royal Caribbean. And by the way, Fred Smith was a founding member of the ESLC back in 2006. Also on the agenda, folks from the ESLC, are Admirals Michelle Howard, who was the Vice Chief of the United States Navy and also commanded all naval forces in Europe. Also, you'll find Admiral Blair, former Director of National Intelligence for the U.S. and former Commander of the United States Pacific Command. You also see General Conway, who was a former Commandant of the Marine Corps. There are tens and tens of other members of the ESLC, all committed to, as I said before, this secure energy of the United States. So why are these folks involved? Well, all of us have experience in matters of energy access and energy access as it involves national security. For example, those of us who served in the military invested decades and just an enormous amount of time, resources, and unfortunately blood in our career ensuring access to the Middle East, basically to the Arabian Gulf. We either deployed there and led forces, as General Conway did and many other generals and some admirals, and led forces in the Middle East, in the Arabian Gulf, in and around the Strait of Hormuz to ensure the Strait of Hormuz is open, and also the Suez Canal, all very important maritime crossroads, if you will, to deliver energy. And you may or may not know today, we still have forces on the Sinai Peninsula ensuring the security of the Suez Canal. Or we organized, trained, and equipped many forces to deploy. I spent a lot of time preparing carrier strike groups to the Persian Gulf, to the Arabian Gulf in that regard. So we have expended a lot of resources, a lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of time for that singular source of energy, the Middle East, and petroleum. In business, those folks, a lot of them dealt with the fluctuation of oil prices, the threat of embargoes, the threat of reduced access, with the issues that are involved in keeping that supply chain going. And just to kind of quantify a small amount, one change, a little anecdote, one change in the cost of $1 of a barrel of oil fully burdened was $30 million in our budget alone in the Department of Defense. So $1 change in price of a barrel of oil, $30 million just like that in our cost for transportation. Now, our mission at the ESLC has evolved. It was about petroleum access, as I mentioned, for a long time, and that's a legacy challenge. We have alternative global sources now outside the Arabian Gulf, and we have alternative sources of energy from natural gas, etc. So the U.S., as we know, is energy dependent and petroleum, but we have new challenges as well. We have renewable energy sources, wind, solar, hydroelectric, just to name a few, and we're dealing with access to resources to enable electrification where it makes sense, batteries, electrical vehicle technology, critical minerals, as we mentioned in the video and as Robbie mentioned, semiconductors, and a reliable and adequate national grid that's going to have to underwrite all of this. We'll have to make sure that we take care of the grid. So the bottom line is, from the ESLC perspective, let's not replace the legacy that was so costly with Mideast dependency with a future dependency controlled by perhaps an unfriendly nation or other unfriendly entities. Let's get out ahead of this issue of energy for a secure United States. Last point I'd like to make is, as Robbie mentioned, we also at the ESLC, we're going international. We have international partners participating and presenting. You'll see them on the agenda today. And we're discussing future collaboration to maybe have kind of an international ESLC where it makes sense. I want to thank you for listening today. I want you to have a great, great summit, and please engage. Thanks very much.